Hey now, ladies and gentlemen. Hello. Hello, 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 and hello. Welcome to our number two of the line, Talk 99.5. Talk 99.5, talk995.com, and AndrewMcLeanWho.com. Speaking of AndrewMcLeanWho.com, I know this is me talking about myself. There was some comment on social media the other day talking about how I talk about myself too much. I saw that. I saw it, but I don't care. I went and I took my wife's car to the car wash the other day, and I found a box of old business cards. They're not that old. They've still got relevant information on it. That are over the line business cards. And they've got the logo, and then on the back it's got the website and everything else. So I started handing those things out like crazy, like I had just like I had just got them. I mean, I had a bunch of them. So I'm gonna start. If y'all see those cards just randomly scattered about the shelves at places like TJ Maxx and Target, you'll know why. Because I just found a bunch of them. And every time my wife takes me somewhere, I'm gonna just start randomly putting over the line business cards all over the place. I'll probably start taping them to items. Like just go and tape it to certain items on the shelf, and then when people get home, they're like, "Oh, what is this?" And then they go look it up. That sounds. I mean, it's probably a good idea. I might try that. All right, 205-545-9950. Christina says that boy Will that made the video, his updates are being shared on James Spann's Facebook. And says, I think Rick Carly's Facebook page. His video, she said his video came out Wednesday. She says she thinks his video came out Wednesday, which is amazing considering the fact that today is Friday. That means less than 48 hours it made its way all the way to the White House. That's awesome, dude. That's awesome. And you know, there's a lot of pitfalls when it comes to social media, and it's been in a lot of cases to the detriment of society. But in situations like this, you're like, thank God for social media because it does do some very good things and helps people get connected and ultimately, hopefully, saves lives. Before I get into the rest of this, let me go to Clarissa. Clarissa, what's up?
Hey, I just wanted to say that one of the reasons that I support President Trump is because he stands firm on two of my soapbox issues. One, which is immigration, and the other one is transgenderism surgery for kids. Being against that, and I just think that that's so awful, and I think that adults that participate in that should be prosecuted because I'm reading from the internet right now, and it says that 25 and 26 studies this past year, that large-scale brain imaging studies show that key neural wiring, network efficiency, and structural changes continue evolving into the late 30s. And one major Cambridge University study identified five broad stages of brain development with a major turning point at 32 when the brain enters a more stable, full adulthood phase. And the frontal cortex is one of the last regions to mature, with the brain reaching full maturity around 25. And so I just think, and that is the National Institute of Mental Health statistics, that they go by that number. And so I just think that that is so awful. The stories about these parents and these teachers and these doctors that are pushing this surgery on these kids, because TikTok is getting more and more crowded with videos of kids that are detransitioning, and they will tell you they were too young and they didn't know what they were doing.
Wow. Wait. So this study is saying that your brain's not like fully in adult mode until 32?
Yeah, all I did was I went into Grok, which is our favorite AI, as you mentioned the other day, and I said, when is a child's brain fully developed? And it gave me all these stats on National Institute of Mental Health, Cambridge University study that is from 25 and 2026.
I mean, it makes sense to me. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I tried to tell my ex-wife. I'm like, listen, it just ain't going to work because I'm not old enough for my brain to lock in. So, um, That's crazy though. But yeah, I mean it's common sense too. I mean, outside of all the research, it's common sense that going around and doing that kind of surgery on a kid and pumping hormones in them and all that kind of stuff is going to jack them up for life. But it's much more damaging than I think most people realize.
Well, I'm
On a
so
general
grateful we
scale.
have a president that stands against, um, the genderism in sports and these surgeries, because he obviously has a lot on his plate, and that he would take the time to come out and make stands against these issues, societal issue plagues, really, that society is dealing with. I think is very important for the next generation and generations to come for this country.
100%. Common sense stuff. That's what we used to call it back in the day. Just common sense stuff. All right, Clarissa.
Thanks, Andrew.
Appreciate it. Yeah, it's but and that's the allure, man. And it's crazy to think about that the allure of Donald Trump is the fact that he just tackles common sense issues that most of us are like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Like we don't want that. You look at just leaving the borders wide open. It's common sense. Why is it common sense? Well, ask any other country across the world, except for the UK, of course. But every other country, ask them. Ask them. Ask Pakistan. Ask Russia. Ask North Korea. Ask China. Ask whoever. Say, is it a good idea to just open our borders and just let everybody in? No, of course not. It's not a good idea. Is it a good idea to be performing elective surgeries that change the genitalia of children? No. It's not a good idea. That's common sense. But we've lost that. We've lost that over the years. And people have been convinced that normal is no longer normal. Common sense is no longer common. And you end up with situations like this that you have to address. It's amazing we have to address it in the first place. That we have to thank our fearless leader for addressing the issue of mutilating children. But we do. And it's, you can point your finger in a million different directions. You can point it in the direction of progressivism, college campuses, professors, whatever it may be. Or you can just point it at leadership, because leadership could have always taken care of issues like this. But instead, they opened their arms to it, especially over the past couple of decades. It really wasn't that long ago that if you brought up something like this, that you would be shunned. You would be looked at as a crazy person. Even during, say, the George Bush administration. If we go back to circa, 2000 to 2008, if you would have talked about gender ideology and changing the gender of minors, like that's crazy talk. But then somewhere between 2008 and today, we got into this realm where there are large chunks of society that think that is normal. And I don't, but I don't know what happened. I mean, I kind of do know what happened, but it's just a battle that we're forced to face. Speaking of past leadership, though, I watched this morning Good Morning America clip. I guess it was maybe from yesterday. And the host on there, it was my first time actually watching Savannah Guthrie back on her show since the whole thing happened with her mom, which, by the way, what's happening there? No updates. And is it Jenna Bush? George Bush's daughter. Jenna Bush is also one of the hosts. And she did an interview with 4 former U.S. presidents as the nation prepares to celebrate its 250th birthday. So she interviewed Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, Joe Biden, and her dad, George W. And it was interesting to watch, but it was also a reminder of how feeble these individuals are, because they're so old at this point. especially Joe Biden and Bill Clinton, but George Bush is getting in that camp as well. But as I was watching it, I was just thinking it back on their terms because that's what they were talking about. Is like, what was the most monumental part of your administration and blah 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 blah. And I was just thinking about all the things that were allowed to happen throughout those what would be, from 1992 at the beginning of the Clinton administration to today that are a direct result, or the problems we face today are a direct result of either what they did or what they didn't do, or what issues that they declined to face. Iran's probably the biggest one. That's the one that's in our face all day, every day. Iran has been an issue for decades, far long before even George Bush or Bill Clinton in 1992. Iran has been an issue. And through all of those presidents, nobody faced the issue. Some of them, Barack Obama in particular, exacerbated the issue by sending $1.7 billion to Iran. But where in that giant window, we're talking about whatever the math on that is, 92 to 26, that's 30 something, almost 40 years. Where was the real leadership? Where's the leadership from these individuals, both Democrat and Republican, that saw this coming down the pike and said, you know what, we need to put a stop to that? It was as if nobody was looking at future generations. And I didn't really think about that or view it that way until now, where I can see a president that looks at issues and says, what is this issue going to be doing to generations 30 and 40 years from now? What kind of issues is this country going to be facing if I allow this to go, or if I just kick the can down the road for the next president? What is this going to look like for the kids and grandkids of the current generation, or whoever? What is this going to look like for the country 30, 40, 50 years from now? And he looks at things that way, and he decides whether or not to tackle problems because of that mindset. And I can't think of any other president that has really done that. Maybe since Ronald Reagan, that has said, hey, this is going to be a problem in the future. Let's go ahead and tackle it. Everybody else just kick the can down the road. Why? Because facing these problems, facing big problems that may involve some national adversity, such as what we're going through now, is not politically popular. And political popularity is much more important to presidents and politicians all across the board than actually solving problems. That's the sad reality. And I hope with what we've seen, we're not going to get that from the Democrat Party. That's a lost cause. But I hope because of what we've seen, the mindset of solving problems and thinking about the future is now the new standard, opposed to kicking the can down the road being the standard. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if that's actually going to be the case. I don't know if we will actually raise the bar, or if we have raised the bar. I think we've raised the bar for our expectations. But have we raised the bar for politicians? We'll see. We'll see in the near future. But it's up to us to hold these individuals to those standards and to make sure that we're picking individuals we believe will meet that standard. And in most cases, hopefully, exceed that standard. 205-545-9950. More Than a Line coming up next. 205-545-9950. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. If you want to get in, that's the way to do it. I'm seeing some awful, and it's starting to make sense to me as to why people have so many bad takes as of late. Because some smart people are getting on social media and having some really bad takes. People that, including myself, respected. People like me respected these individuals because they're smart. They know what they know what they're talking about. They especially some podcasters that get out there and they interview a lot of different people, and they are in the business of learning. They're like trying to absorb information. Joe Rogan, prime example. He was kind of the pioneer of this idea of getting out there, doing a podcast, and just bringing in guests from all walks of life and trying to hear every aspect and all different voices and come up with a conclusion, your own opinion, if you will. What makes sense to you? And that's fair to do, to come up with, take all the information and come up with what makes sense to you. But that doesn't always mean it's right. And some individuals are falling into that trap. Sean Ryan is one of them. And I hate that we're even in this spot. We're watching Tucker and Megyn Kelly and all these other individuals just go down the pipe. And I'm like, Sean Ryan's in that group now. This is what makes me say this, because I want you to see what he posted this morning. I just came across this, okay? So I'm reading him for the first time. Well, second time, technically. He said, the petrodollar is the foundation of American power. Since the 1970s, oil has only been sold in dollars, forcing every nation on earth to hold dollars, fund our debt, and keep us dominant. Iran just systematically dismantled that. They closed Hormuz, cutting 25% of global oil supply, spiked oil to $118 a barrel, then forced ships to pay in Chinese yuan for passage. Now Gulf states are dumping U.S. treasuries, bond markets are selling off, inflation is surging, Deutsche Bank is warning of a Petro One era. Every link in the petrodollar chain is snapping at once. When it's gone, your borrowing costs explode, your savings erode, and America loses the financial weapon that has kept us dominant for 50 years. China wins without ever pulling a trigger. And all of that is untrue, but especially the final sentence, which is China wins without ever pulling a trigger. In what world does anybody think China's winning here? This is crazy. Everything in there is wrong. The petrodollar isn't the foundation of America's power. America was the world's superpower way before the 1970s. Iran hasn't dismantled the petrodollar. A higher percentage of global payments are done in dollars now than before the war. There are zero ships paying for oil in Chinese yuan and getting through our blockade. And Gulf states are more allied with the U.S. than ever. So I don't know what's happening with Sean Ryan, but I think I say I don't know what's happening. I kind of do. It's just there's so much, and this is effective, man. This is extremely effective. So I got to give them their props and give them their flowers, but the propaganda that's in overdrive is either one, so incredibly convincing, it's turning smart people into lapdogs, or these individuals are being paid off. It's one or the other. The petrodollar system matters a lot. But the claims by Sean Ryan are extremely exaggerated, and none of that makes sense. I almost feel like these people need to be forced to show us their financials just so we know who's paying them. Or whose payroll are you on to be having such stupid tanks? Matt Murphy coming up at 12 o'clock. The return of Matt Murphy. We hadn't talked to him in a while, which will be exciting. If you want to get in, 205-545-9950. That's the way to do it. We're getting a fresh coat of paint out in the hallway. So I'm spending the commercial break standing out there and getting high. Just in case y'all are wondering. If I happen to pass out sometime during the show, you'll know. I'm outside huffing paint during the commercial breaks. The Justice Department has announced that it's readopting the firing squad as a means of execution. That's wild. That's the wildest headline of the day. Firing squad back at it, man. Firing squad honestly seems kind of like a cop-out because it seems just kind of like, which I guess all of them are. Depending on the crime. I mean, if it's a very brutal and nefarious crime, most of us, I think, want that individual to suffer if they are in fact guilty, obviously. And that doesn't really happen with any, I don't think. Maybe the electric chair a little bit, but lethal injection, firing squad, that's all kind of short and sweet. But whatever. We'll see what comes out of that. Let's see. Let's talk about who are we talking about? Let's go this route. I was talking about presidents. That's what it was. And the Today Show interview with the 4 presidents. But with the current president, as you know, busy man. Busy man. He announces yesterday that Israel and Lebanon have agreed to extend their ceasefire by 3 weeks. Now, it's it's almost like a side quest in the sense of, it's a conflict that's been going on for a while, and it's not necessarily between Lebanon and Israel. It's between proxy groups and Israel. Proxy groups that just happen to have a stronghold on southern Lebanon, and that's Hezbollah. Hezbollah, as you know, is an Iranian-funded terror group, like many others, that is in the business of terrorizing the Jews and Israel, much like much of the Muslim world. These just happen to be willing to take action, much like Hamas in Gaza and everything else. And so Israel's had this, kind of back and forth and their attempts to eliminate Hezbollah from that region because it is, right next door. It's been going on for a while. Well, Trump has been able to, for the second time now, broker a ceasefire between Lebanon and Israel, or the Hezbollah terrorists or whatever. Now, that's during a ceasefire. If the Hezbollah terrorists decide to fire rockets into Israel, they're not just going to sit there and take it. They're going to fire back on these individuals wherever the rockets come from. But these terrorists are like cockroaches. You kill one and they spread, and they're all over the place, and they're almost impossible to eliminate. But he announces yesterday that Israel and Lebanon agreed to extend their ceasefire agreement by 3 weeks. That's a very long time for a ceasefire. Trump, Vance, Rubio, Mike Huckabee, and Michael Issa met with the representatives from Lebanon and Israel in the Oval Office yesterday. The ceasefire will be extended by 3 weeks, according to the president. Here's his full statement. He said, the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee, and Ambassador to Lebanon Michael Issa met today with high-ranking representatives of Israel and Lebanon in the Oval Office. The meeting went very well. The United States is going to work with Lebanon in order to help protect itself from Hezbollah. The ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon will be extended by 3 weeks. I look forward in the near future to hosting the Prime Minister of Israel, Bibi Netanyahu, and the President of Lebanon, Joseph Aoun. It was a great honor to be a participant in this very historic meeting, and it is a very historic meeting. And even more so if the president of Lebanon and Bibi Netanyahu are meeting in the same room, as the leaders of those two countries haven't met in, 37 years or whatever it is. This comes on the heels of a 10-day ceasefire that was announced last week and earlier this month. Trump said a double-sided ceasefire was agreed. He announced a double-sided ceasefire and agreed to suspend his planned military strikes about Iran. Okay, it's just going into the Iran stuff. But anyway, so that's big. And that is also going to tie back into what we're dealing with Iran, because remember, it's the terror groups, it's the terror proxies. This is when we talk about the reasons for going after Iran, whether, some people want to believe it or not. Iran is responsible for the death of a lot of Americans, a lot of civilians, whether they're, responsible for the death of people in other countries. That doesn't negate the fact that they kill Americans and they threaten Americans every single day. They threaten soldiers in the region every single day. It doesn't matter that their major beef is with Israel. That doesn't automatically mean that we are doing this because of Israel. When our people are in danger, when our citizens and our military, our men and women in uniform are in danger, as they have given their lives and volunteered to serve this country, the least you could do is be like, yeah, I support actions that keep you from getting blown up. It's the least you could do. But some people don't want to do that. I went through a long list yesterday. Actually, I didn't go through a long list. I just gave you a handful. But I've got a list a mile long of what Iran has done in the sense of attacking our men and women. And I'm saying a long, long list that I can go back through if need be. But they have attacked our men and women year after year, decade after decade. And it's not something we're just making up. It's not propaganda. It's real. And even in the sense of the ability to acquire a nuclear weapon, an intercontinental ballistic missile with a nuclear warhead, when they're chanting death to America, I got to say it makes me a little uneasy. And I would like to make sure that those individuals don't have that. And we're making that happen. Contrary to what seems like popular belief. I don't believe it's popular belief, by the way. I just think it's much like minority groups on the left, such as the transgender movement or whatever it is, that the small group of people on a particular issue tend to be the loudest. The smallest group tends to be the loudest. And they have to be the loudest because they need you to think that there's more of them than there actually are. I think that's what's going on with the opposition on the conservative side with the conflict in Iran. Look at the position they're in. And we've gone over this 100 times, whether it's the blockade, it's the hemorrhaging of money, $500 million a day. They are mere hours away from running out of storage space, which will shut down their oil wells that won't be able to go back online for years to come. Not only that, but they won't even ever be able to produce at the capacity that they're producing now. The dismantling of the military, the Air Force, the Navy's at the bottom of the sea. The instructions now to take out these small boats that might even possibly be laying out sea mines. Anybody that gets near our ships that pose a threat are getting blown up. We're still blowing drug boats up out in the ocean that are making their way to the U.S., by the way. Those stories are still, even though I'm not talking about them, that's still happening. Even the supreme leader that nobody has seen that was appointed after we killed Khomeini is in such bad shape, this individual cannot even communicate. Yes, I'm talking about the gay Ayatollah. There's a report from the New York Times saying he's so severely injured that he's waiting for a prosthetic leg. The dude's missing limbs, and he even needs cosmetic surgery because his face is so mangled. He's alive, but he's not there. He's there, but he's not there, is basically what they're saying. The New York Times says Mr. Khomeini, who was selected by a council of senior clerics as the new supreme leader, has been in hiding since American and Israeli forces bombed his father's compound on February 28th, where he also lived with his family. His father, wife, and son were all killed. He's probably in the basement playing PS5 when the airstrikes happened. And then now he's all mangled up. It says, though Mr. Khomeini was gravely wounded, he is mentally sharp and engaged. This is according to the New York source. Let me back up before I even read this. The New York Times sources say access to the Ayatollah is extremely limited now. No senior officials visit him, lest Israel trace them to his location. So they don't even want high-profile individuals within the regime going to visit him, just in case they find him and they blow him up in this underground hospital. This message says, and I don't even know who this is from. This is from the Iranians. It says, though Mr. Khomeini was gravely wounded, he is mentally sharp and engaged, according to 4 senior Iranian officials familiar with his health. One leg was operated on 3 times, and he is awaiting a prosthetic. Oh, this must be from the New York Times, I guess. He had surgery on one hand and is slowly regaining function. His face and lips have been burned severely, making it difficult for him to speak, the official said, adding eventually he will need plastic surgery. Messages are handwritten, sealed in envelopes, and relayed via human chain from one trusted courier to the next. The allegation is they're basically sending handwritten messages to the Ayatollah via camel. They're sending somebody on a camel to go through back roads and stuff, so they're not on any kind of major highways where they can be spotted. And it's bad. Here's the New York Post report. Although the report describes Khomeini as difficult to reach, it also cites the Iranian officials as saying the country's president and health minister have both been involved in his care. The report supports Trump administration officials' contention that peace talks are inhibited by slow communication and uncertainty about whether foreign minister and parliament speaker are able to speak for their nation. So, essentially, long story short, the Ayatollah is in such bad shape, he's missing a leg, his hands are mangled, his face is mangled, and he's going to have plastic surgery. And that he can't speak because his face and his lips are so badly burned. No wonder they brought out a cardboard cutout of the guy. Could you imagine this individual being mangled in that manner and bringing him out and being like, this is the guy that's going to save us from the evil empire, America. And he's all mangled from America. That wouldn't be a good look. That wouldn't be reassuring to anybody in the regime. So it's probably good that they're keeping him under wraps. Your phone call is coming up next, 205-545-9950. More after this. Fox News is talking about an anti-aging trend among kids sparking new scrutiny. What are kids doing with anti-aging stuff? Is that the whole the hitting yourself in the face with the hammer deal that one podcaster was doing? Man, seems just like yesterday we were eating Tide Pods. Maybe we should go back to that. Bubba in Arizona. Bubba Rumble, what's up?
Heck yeah, make eating Tide Pods great again.
That's what I'm saying.
Why did people even intervene in that? We could have sent out a whole bunch of these Zoomer Doomers without even having to do much except just watch the show.
Well, we just don't let kids, live their life anymore. The world's too dangerous, and we can't let them out of our sight.
Well, I'm all about them hitting themselves in the face with hammers. Maybe if they do that enough, they'll knock some sense into their propagandized minds.
That's not a bad idea.
Sledgehammers. Use sledgehammers.
Little Peter Gabriel sledgehammer.
That's right, sledgehammer.
Yeah.
All right, so here we are at the latest crossroads of having to pick a side in the Middle East. You either gotta be Team Israel or Team Iran right now. You could put Team Gaza in there too. And I always find myself not on either one of those sides. I'm America first. I'm MAGA, so I guess that makes me a anti-Semitic Islamophobe.
Yeah, that's apparently my deal too. Like I'm in support of America only, and because of that, one day I hate the Jews, and the next day I love the Jews, and I'm being paid by Bibi Netanyahu, and then it just goes back and forth, and I guess that's what happens when you're America first, but you're also common sense.
Well, that, I guess at least I know I'm not the only one in that boat, because, I live in America, so I kind of want America to do good. My bad. I know I'm supposed to genuflect to the problems of the world at all times, but America has got plenty of problems of our own these days, and we better start getting serious about getting ourselves back to our rightful place as the world superpower. You know what I mean? And I'm not going to feel bad about that. The world was better off when America was in a stronger position. You can quote me on that and hate me if y'all need to.
Yeah, it's just I think it's a matter of what's trendy, and people think certain opinions are trendy instead of just being themselves and having an opinion that's within their best interest or what they believe in. They just kind of latch on to their, favorite talking head or their favorite podcaster or whatever. Because it's wild because I think even on this show, like, there's not anybody listening that's, ultra MAGA because I told them to be. They're ultra MAGA because they decided that's what's best for them and that's what's best for their country. And they just happen to agree with me. But we're entering this realm where people all of a sudden, have like talking heads or podcasters all of a sudden have a different take, and in some cases completely opposite of what they've always believed. And some people just turn with them because they're like, well, I really like this guy. I think he's super smart, so he must be right. And that's not always going to be the case, cuz you got to quit putting so much stock in people, because people are going to let you down. No matter how many followers they got, no matter how big their platform is, they're still human, and they're going to let you down at some point. And so stop following these individuals into bad opinions.
Yeah, I got to agree on that. And if there's one podcaster that seems to have a trance-like effect over his listeners, it would be Joe Rogan, man. There's people that live and die by the Joe Rogan sword. And, he's good at being an interviewer, but I wouldn't exactly call him a genius politically. And I'd also like to remind everybody he's an avowed Bernie bro. That's his politics. He's a Bernie bro, and, I guess he's probably a libtarditarian in a lot of ways too. But politically, he's kind of a dunce. He is good at doing interviews, but I wouldn't put all my eggs in anybody's basket, well, except for Andrew Manjus.
That's right.
Not only do I march to the tune of Trump's dog whistle, I also march to the Hey Now drum. So on that, I'm out. Have a nice weekend.
Hey now.
Hey now.
There's Bubba Rumble. Yeah. I like Joe Rogan. I like him a lot. I think he's great. But my political advice, I am not going to take from him. He will often seem to land on the conservative side, but I think it's because he is a liberal, but the Democrat Party pushes him in a direction that makes him look a lot more moderate. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, it means he's closer to the middle than most liberals, but still wouldn't get your political advice from Joe Rogan.